Hey guys, what's going on? Andrew coming at you, and in this one, this is 5 more things, part 2, that are things that don't make sense ever since I've lived in Sweden. Now, it's possible some of these might intersect with some things I've talked about in previous videos. I cannot help that. I try to make these as different as possible, but just so you know that going into this. Number 1 has to be gun laws. Now, I've talked about this multiple times, but I am just so frustrated and so tired that we never do anything in the United States, and that people just say, well, you can't do anything, or there's no data on this, or nothing can be done. There's no evidence of this. And then they say under the same breath, like, look, Switzerland, everybody has guns. And they don't explain that everyone in Switzerland has different regulations and rules that we don't have in the United States.
Because it's so highly regulated, it gives us the freedom to bear arms, to shoot our arms, but always under a highly regulated regime.
So I can't just walk in here and say, hey, I want to buy that gun.
Absolutely impossible.
Before buying any gun, you have to get a license from local authorities and undergo background checks that include screenings for violence, mental health, and addiction issues.
And nothing happens. No dialogue happens. And then another incident happens, and more people get hurt, and more people get hurt, and more people get hurt. And you just get numb to it in the United States. You just accept it. And then you just end up accepting it, and it just burns you out. Number 2 has to be our college system and paying for it. It just is something that becomes very expensive over time and causes so much stress.
Because it empowers you.
But the president of another major public university did agree to talk about why college has become so expensive.
What makes this topic so difficult?
Because there are no good answers and no good solutions right now.
Orignal Couture is the president and chancellor of the University of Houston, where tuition and fees are more than 5 times higher than they were just a couple decades ago. She's also one of the highest paid university presidents in the country, a group whose salaries have grown along with the cost of attendance.
Why couldn't you leave the classrooms a little bit old and keep the services a little bit scaled back and just keep tuition and fees and room and board down?
Well, I'm glad you aren't a university president, because you want to come to a facility, you want to come to a place which feels cared for.
How are you? I'm great. As long as university presidents continue to be as ambitious as you've been, students around the country and here are going to walk out with a degree and an experience, but a boatload of debt, a record amount. So how does that cycle break? Doesn't it break by someone like yourself saying, no more, I'm not going to do it?
You are telling me, don't be ambitious for the sake of your students. Don't be ambitious about them graduating. Don't be ambitious about them learning. Why am I university president then? I am debt focused on student success. We look at holistically what students need and what more we can do for them, because at the end of the day, we need more graduates, more college graduates.
It's just really difficult. And what ended up happening in 2009, college kept going up, but there was less jobs for millennials, and it made it very difficult for a lot of them to find jobs. A lot of millennials are stuck. And I personally believe that the United States is not going to recover unless the federal government steps in and offers some kind of student loan forgiveness. This is something I very much push. It's not about wanting free stuff or having free stuff. It's about the fact that young people aren't buying homes, are not going to have kids, and it's not going to be good for countries long term if we do not take care of our people. Number 3 has to be healthcare. If there's any positive that comes from coronavirus, it's the first time in the United States that everybody's health matters to everybody else, and it's super important. And it's something that I think has become more important for Americans. We want everyone to be healthy. We want everyone to be vaccinated or social distancing or taking care of themselves, especially if they have a lot of other health problems, so that they don't get sick or hurt from coronavirus, for example.
I have one bill alone that is $15,000. Sometimes I have to go without my heart medicine. Sometimes I have to go without my nerve pain medicine. Sometimes I just have to take less than I'm supposed to, so I'm constantly living in agony.
Miranda had a specific issue of never testing positive for COVID on FDA-approved diagnostic tests, which made getting treatment difficult.
The number 4 thing that does not make sense to me has to be the fact that there are no unions in the United States. And unions are looked so down upon, and how you feel. I said in my previous video, the American ethic, and unions are really looked down upon, which is just silly when you think about it from the long-term perspective, because unions definitely give you more power. If you look at a country like Sweden, it's not that corporations in Sweden are just better corporations or they're just nicer as a whole. It's because the unions will battle people tooth and nail. Every time they're trying to go a little bit further here in Sweden, and every time the unions are battling it out. And it's that strong unions that definitely gives a lot of workers very much strong rights.
Inside this fulfillment center outside Dallas, the focus is Amazon's signature speed, efficiency, and customer satisfaction. But Amazon employee Vicki Shannon Allen says Amazon's work demands are ruining her life.
It's been the ultimate nightmare.
Allen says she processed an average of 600 items an hour on the job here at a broken workstation that injured her back.
It felt like somebody stabbed me in the back and drug a knife all the way down.
Allen showed us documents and claims Amazon attempted to minimize her injury by not sending her to a doctor for weeks and not paying her during the dispute over her workers' compensation claim. Now she's homeless, sleeping in her car, often in the Amazon parking lot.
It's really a sad thing, because if you look at, I always talk about this, but if you look at productivity and how much more productive workers are versus how much more workers get paid salary-wise, and this is in a lot of countries, we're not getting paid what we should for the level of productivity that we are placing. The number 5 thing that doesn't make sense to me about the United States of America after living in Sweden has to be the two-party system. I love that at least there's a lot more parties to choose from in Sweden. There's usually 3 ruling parties and not just 2. In the States, it's just awful that you can only have 2 opinions, that they're so extreme.
Well, there are a couple of things going on that Americans sense around us, Neil. First, polarization between the parties is at record highs, and it's driving political stress and anxiety, making Americans feel like our fellow countrymen aren't even on the same page or in the same nation. And then within each party, you have a couple of factions that, in my view, ought to comprise separate parties instead of trying to have them under the same tent. Where if you had a genuine multi-party system in America, in my view, there'd be 5 parties. There'd be progressive Democrats, moderate Democrats, a group of centrists, moderate Republicans, and then conservative Republicans. And I'm going to suggest that system would actually work better, because you'd have much more
like
in the
a
way of
parliamentary
compromise.
system.
When a lot of people are somewhat in the middle, and nowadays everyone's like, you can't be in the middle. You have to make a decision. You have to choose. You have to pick a team. It becomes like rooting for sports teams, and it gets so aggressive, and it's just so stressful that I always feel like America would benefit from 4 parties. A very far right party, a right party, a very far left, and a left party, and then some other parties maybe in between. But then you'd have to have Democrats and Republicans giving up power, and we know that's never going to happen. And it's just very frustrating, and something that does not make sense to me after living in Sweden. So I hope that this video found you well. Please let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.